You think we're up against a monster? Ah, science fiction stuff.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time. If you've just stumbled on these Twilight Zone videos, then I'm doing a proper, full-on, complete exploration of the original 156 episodes of the first iteration of the Twilight Zone, the original black and white series that Rod Serling created. And I'm taking each episode and I'm doing them in batches. So usually most of the videos are going to be videos of 6 episodes. There's a couple of exceptions, but it'll end up being 26 videos, should be. So I'm on part 15. I should have said there'll be 26 parts because it could get confusing with me saying episodes and parts. There'll be 26 parts. I'm now on part 15. This is the 15th part of my exploration. So I'm well into season 3 now, and this features a couple of famous episodes, but I'll start straight away with this first one, which is The Hunt. Okay, so The Hunt starts with this opening narration. An old man and a hound dog named Rip, off for an evening's pleasure in quest of raccoon. Usually these evenings end with one tired old man, one battle-scarred hound dog, and one or more extremely dead raccoons. But as you may suspect, this will not be the case tonight. These hunters won't be coming home from the hill. They've headed for the backwoods of the Twilight Zone. So The Hunt is written by Earl Hamner, who ends up writing a few episodes actually for the Twilight Zone. So he's not one of the most famous writers in the Twilight Zone canon. But he's written a few. And it's quite a sweet episode. It's quite a sentimental episode. Unlike many of the other episodes, it's got a very optimistic, upbeat image of death. It's not cynical like some of the episodes are. And there's kind of a big foreshadowing in the episode, so you know kind of what's going to happen. So it's not really a mystery thing. It's just watching it play out, and the characterization of the characters. It's kind of carried a lot by the main character. He's got the lion's share of the dialogue, and he's a lovely character, and it's played beautifully, and it's quite a somber episode as well, I'd say. But there's a lot of heart to it. There's a lot of sort of sentimentality, but I think pitched quite nicely, so it's not overly done, and it's very charming. And I'd say it's also a tribute to dogs, because he's not going anywhere without his dog. It's quite sweet. So yeah, The Hunt is quite a nice one in this batch of episodes. And the next one is Showdown with Rance McGrew. Okay, so the Showdown with Rance McGrew starts off with this opening narration. Some 100 years ago, a motley collection of tough moustaches galloped across the West and left behind a raft of legends, and it seems a reasonable conjecture that if there are any television sets up in cowboy heaven, and any of these rough and woolly nail-eaters could see with what careless abandon their names are bandied about, they're very likely turning over in their graves, or worse, getting out of them. Which gives you a clue as to the proceedings that will begin in just a moment, when one Mr. Rance McGrew, a $3,000 a week phony baloney, discovers that this week's current edition of Make Believe is being shot on location, and that location is the Twilight Zone. So Showdown with Rance McGrew is written by Rod Serling, and it's a really unusual one for him. It's quite an upbeat one. It's kind of a comedy, although I didn't find it funny, and I'd say that it's the one episode out of this batch of 6 that I didn't really like. So I'm like 80 something episode at this point in the show, and this is only the 5th one I haven't liked. So it's not a bad tally, but I didn't really like it. It's got an unusual kind of tone to it though, which I think is quite nice. You know, there's a there's a lot of variety in the Twilight Zone, and I think this is an example of that. And it's like a play on a TV star meeting real dread and a possibility of his death through the real gunfighter turning up kind of thing. And he's just an actor. It's that kind of plot, which has happened since then with Three Amigos, things like that. So it's a bit like that. But clearly this was a long time before Three Amigos and all that kind of thing. So yeah, Showdown with Rance McGrew. Wasn't fussed. Didn't really like it. But it's impressive that it's such a different kind of episode, I think, for the Twilight Zone. Okay, the next one is really famous, and that's Kick the Can. And Kick the Can starts with this opening narration. Sunnyvale Rest, a home for the aged, a dying place, and a common children's game called Kick the Can that will shortly become a refuge for a man who knows he will die in this world if he doesn't escape into the Twilight Zone. Kick the Can is written by George Clayton Johnson. It was famously remade in the film Twilight Zone the movie. It was remade again, I think, and it's just one of those episodes that is more famous than almost all of the other episodes. It's literally one of the top 3 famous episodes, and it's a beautifully done episode. It's a lovely script. It's ultimately about Charlie, who is fed up with being old. He's fed up being surrounded by old people. He's fed up of the day-to-day life of this old people's home that he lives in, and he's trying to G up his friends to live like they used to, you know, and do that thing they used to do. They used to do this game, Kick the Can. Let's play Kick the Can again. Let's try and capture our youth. Just go and get this energy back, you know. And it's got a really, really lovely ending to the episode that works perfectly and is not overdone, but actually also it's got a really lovely relationship in at the center of it between Charlie, the main character, and Ben, who is like the opposite personality. There's a real melancholy to Ben because he's got this angry bitterness about him, but Charlie hints that he wasn't like that when he was a kid, and I think that could be why Ben is so extreme in his bitterness, because he used to be so alive and vibrant, and he's just lost all that with old age. And I think that's explored in this episode really well. And that because the drive in the episode is all really based around those two characters and their completely opposing attitude to the old people's home. That's what makes the episode. It has got a very famous ending, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen it, but it's beautiful and brilliant. But it is about the relationship between those two characters, really. Okay, the next episode is A Piano in the House. And this episode begins with this opening narration. Mr. Fitzgerald Fortune, theatre critic and cynic at large, on his way to a birthday party. If he knew what was in store for him, he probably wouldn't go, because before this evening is over, that cranky old piano is going to play those piano roll blues with some effects that can only happen only in the Twilight Zone. Okay, this is written by Earl Hamner again. So, as I said, he's starting to write more episodes for the show. And I think this is a really good episode. It's quite an unknown episode. Nobody really talks about this one. And I think it's done really well. It's an interesting concept. And it's got a real tension about it. It's quite a nasty episode, which could put people off. But I think nowadays, you know, we're used to seeing shows with unattractive and unappealing characters. And I think it's the main character that's the unappealing character. So this man, who's a rich man, but again, very obnoxious, he goes into a shop that's essentially a junk shop because he wants to find a cheap piano. And he wants to find like a piano roll, kind of pianola kind of piano that will play itself, because in his words, he doesn't think that his wife, who he's going to buy the piano for, is going to be able to play the piano, so it'll be a waste of money unless he gets one of these pianos that plays itself. That's kind of typical of his attitude to other people. And he does find a piano, and this piano is a magical piano. It's not just a piano. It transforms the people that are listening to the music, and ultimately their hidden thoughts and their hidden attitudes come out in a kind of a hypnotic way when the music's played and they're listening to the music. And ultimately that's at the center of this episode, and it all plays out in his birthday party that he puts on for his wife. And he's really nasty, and he ultimately gets his comeuppance. That's what happens with the Twilight Zone. Nasty characters usually get their comeuppance. And in the meantime, before that happens, there's a really lovely scene when this really morose butler gets the opportunity through this piano. It plays the music, and then his hidden self comes out, and he has this awesome scene where he's really excitable and cheery and goes a bit like mad with excitement and freaks everyone out in the room. That's a great scene, and the butler's played really well. But yeah, I do think this is a really good episode, and it is really tense when these truths are coming out in his guests, in the birthday party's guests, and with himself, this nasty man that bought this piano. It is genuinely tense, and I think it's really played well. There's a character in it that he humiliates a few characters in it, and you know it's written in a really sharp way, a very sharp script, and there's not a lot of wasted lines, and it really is really effective, and you really feel for the people he's humiliating, but you also kind of feel for him a little bit, even though he's a very dislikable character. So yeah, A Piano in the House is a really interesting episode. Okay, so then the next episode is The Last Rites of Jeff Myrtlebank. And The Last Rites of Jeff Myrtlebank starts with this opening narration. Time, the mid-20s. Place, the Midwest. The southernmost section of the Midwest. We were just witnessing a funeral that didn't come off exactly as planned due to a slight fallout from the Twilight Zone. And this won me over in the end. It's written and directed by Montgomery Pittman, who's done a couple of other episodes. So again, this little repertory company in the Twilight Zone continues on. These people keep coming back. And James Best is back as well. So James Best appeared in a different episode, and he's the main character in this one. And you definitely see the actor that goes on to become Sheriff P. Coltrane in Dukes of Hazzard. The characterization is very similar in this character. He plays Jeff Myrtlebank in this story. So that's quite nice that you see that element. But yeah, it's a story that I was struggling to really get involved with and connect to for most of it, and then I ended up really liking it by the end of it. A town is mourning the death of Jeff Myrtlebank, played by James Best, and as the funeral is happening, he comes out of the coffin. He literally pokes his head out of the coffin and walks out, and they're all frightened. They go, they scream, and they run out, and they don't know what's going on. He tells them he's not died, and they don't trust him at first, and then they do trust him, but there's a lot of suspicion in the village, and the guys in the village are kind of getting together and saying, we need to do something about this because it's not Jeff, it's not right, he doesn't look right, I don't trust him. And Comfort, his fiancée, she doesn't feel comfortable with him either, although she's kind of accepted his return from the dead. But it kind of plays out so that very subtly you can see that something else is going on. And it comes to a head. They kind of threaten him. He kind of threatens them back in a cryptic way. And it's a really nice ending because it's kind of open-ended, but you can see what's going on, but nobody else can. It's a good ending. I like the ending kind of really made it for me, and the ending narration is really quite funny, and it's very quick and it's not too overdone. And it's just a little bit of Rod Serling's humour there coming out in the ending narration. So yeah, the last rites of Jeff Myrtlebank, I think, is actually a good episode in the end. Won me over. And then the last episode is my all-time favourite episode. So this batch does include my all-time favourite episode, which is To Serve Man. Okay, and To Serve Man, absolutely amazing episode, starts with this opening narration. Respectfully submitted for your perusal, a Canamite. Height, a little over 9 feet. Weight, in the neighbourhood of 350 pounds. Origin, unknown. Motives, therein hangs the tale. For in just a moment, we're going to ask you to shake hands, figuratively, with a Christopher Columbus from another galaxy and another time. This is the Twilight Zone. Okay, so To Serve Man is written by Rod Serling based on a short story by Damon Knight, who's a very famous science fiction writer that's got a very important role in the development of science fiction as an editor as well as a writer. But this story comes from his original short story. And I actually have the book that it featured in the Damon Knight anthology or collection called Far Out. So yeah, To Serve Man is an awesome story. It's brilliantly adapted by Rod Serling. And ultimately, if you don't know the story, you might know this one. But if you don't know the story, Earth is visited by an alien race called the Canamites. And the Canamites are represented by this very tall alien that is actually played by Richard Keel from the James Bond movies. He had a tall villain, Jaws. Yeah, Richard Keel plays the kind of representative of the Canamites. And it's quite nice the way the dialogue's done, because the speech is done where he doesn't move his mouth or whatever, and the speech is done through like a speaker. And it kind of, I think, I quite like that, because ultimately they wouldn't speak the same language, so it's quite nice it's done like that, I think. And ultimately they promise all these different things. They promise a cure for cancer and a new kind of energy that would be much better for them and for the planet, and all these different things that they're offering. So this altruistic, selfless visit from these aliens, and ultimately the Earth authorities don't really trust them straight away, and it kind of develops from there. They're trying to figure out whether there is anything sinister going on, and they've got this book that they've got hold of, which is from the Canamites, and they're trying to figure out what it means. So trying to translate the language in it so they can get some insight into what the Canamites' motives are. And about halfway through the episode, they work out that the translation of the title is To Serve Man. And that definitely coincides with the idea that the Canamites have been saying, that they're just there to do good things for mankind, and that's the only reason why they're doing it, blah, 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 blah. And there's a very famous twist at the end. It's the best twist in the entire series, one of the best twists of all time, and it's just amazing. And I love the fact that the way that the episode is written is done really well. So it starts off with kind of like a narration that I think kind of gives you the impression of a kind of a more of a literate approach to the episode. You can get that sort of first person's thoughts that you might get from reading the story in a narration. I think that's done really well. And I love the development of the way everyone's suspicious of the Canamites, and then they start accepting them, and just the way the plot moves is brilliant. Everything about this episode is fantastic. The actors involved, absolutely nail the nuances of what they're doing. It's just brilliant. It's an absolutely brilliant episode. To Serve Man, love it. I've seen it so many times, and it always impresses me. So that's a nice one to finish this little batch. I hope you've enjoyed that, and maybe you've been inspired to watch these episodes. You might know these episodes already. If you do, please comment below. But yeah, thanks for watching. Stay curious, everybody. Bye.
picture of what it's like to be you.